Hello, welcome to the Sports Philanthropy Podcast. I am your host, Roy Kessel, and today we are very excited to have with us special guest Rob Purvy. Rob is one of the founders of ThoroMan, and he's going to tell us about the great work that organization is doing. So, Rob, thank you for taking the time out and joining us for today's show.
Thank you for having me here. I appreciate it.
Well, we're excited to learn more about the work of ThoroMan, but I want to take you back to the time when Rob was a young boy. What first got you excited and interested in sports?
Oh, that's a great question. And I can't even really remember when. I think I always just liked sports since I was a kid. And I think maybe because of where I grew up, I actually live in the West Coast now, but I grew up in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And I think anybody that loves sports knows how Philadelphians feel about sports. I also thought that I was going to, at some point, be a professional athlete. But I think for most of us that think that way, it might not happen. But I love sports so much that I wanted to be a part of sports once I found out that I wasn't going to be a pro. And a lot of times when we say that, it doesn't mean that you're not good. But, particularly if you look at certain sports, it's only a small amount of people that actually become pros. And a lot of times it's other people that are just as good, but maybe something happened that didn't allow them to make it, or maybe they just have a different path, or something in life just changes things. But I was really blessed that I really, truly wanted to be a part of sports, even though I wasn't a professional athlete in sports. And then that's what got me into the sportswear industry. And it seems like it was yesterday, but it was really many, many years ago. And I was also really in love with sneakers. I know we hear a lot of times today, people use certain different terms and everything, whether you're like a sneakerhead or whatever the case may be. But I definitely was someone that really loved sneakers. So as a kid, that was part of what I was about. Eventually, I actually got a job working at a sneaker store. And that sneaker store really is very, very well known to everyone. Times have changed. But when I got out of school, I actually got a job with Foot Locker. And that was just something that changed my life because I was working there in the early and mid 1980s. And during the mid 1980s is when the sneaker industry just kind of exploded. It just blew up. And the technologies were coming in and all of those type of things. Some great brands were doing great things at that time. And I've just felt that this is something I really like doing, but I wanted to take it to the next level. And there was a person who used to come to our store all the time, and they would actually ask me a lot of questions. And I seemed to be the person that wanted to answer these questions. But it turned out that the person was what they called a tech rep, which was a representative of the major brands that want to find out what's happening locally in the different parts of the country. So every time she came, she would find me and I would give her some answers to questions because we didn't have social media or anything like that back then. So you had to go someplace and speak to somebody and get information. I was pretty good at giving up the information. And as time went by, she came to the store again and she said, I just am coming to say goodbye because they moved me and I'm now working in the organization. I work at the headquarters now. So I won't see you again, but I think all of the information you gave me helped me to get this job I have now. So I asked her and I said, well, who's going to do what you do now? She said, I have no idea. I said, well, could you take my name and submit me? Because I think I have the ability to do some of the work that you've been doing. She said, yeah, I'll put your name in. And, it was just a thing. I didn't think anything was going to happen. But another time when I was at Foot Locker, the phone rang. And when I picked it up, it was actually her boss that said, he gave me his name. and his name is Jim Van Dyne. He's actually a GOAT in the industry these days. He's retired now because this was many years ago. And he said, "We want to hire you." And I said, "Really?" He said, "Yeah, because what we learned about you was great, and we think you would be the type of person that can be a tech rep." I said, "Oh, okay." He said, "But the only problem that we have is we're so pressured right now to hire people. You can't give your job telling them that you're going to leave in 2 weeks or 3 weeks or whatever it would be. We want you to leave as soon as possible because we've already sent an airline ticket to you that you can get on the plane and you could come to our headquarters." So at that time, I was living in Philadelphia. Their headquarters was in Boston, Massachusetts, because the brand that I'm talking about right now is Reebok. So I got on the plane, I went up there, and I was meeting people that was in the headquarters and everything. And the next thing I know, I'm a tech rep. And I had to actually work in Philadelphia, all the way over to Penn State, New Jersey, Delaware, and occasionally I had to go and work up in New York when it was a big event and the New Yorkers would need some additional tech reps to be there. So it was cool. Had a good time doing that. Learned a lot. And every time, once a quarter, I would have to go to Boston to meet with all of the other tech reps. So that was cool. But at the end of all of these meetings, they would say, these tech reps, you are all new people. You're young. You're going to go to the next level. So some people may want to figure out if they can do marketing, if they can do sales, and all of these different disciplines that's in the sneaker industry. They would say that. But the boss, Jim, he would always say, "Wait a minute, I didn't tell you everything." They want to find out, is anybody interested in moving over to Asia to work in the sneaker industry. I only want to raise my hand. Nobody else wanted to leave the United States and go to Asia because you had never been out of the country and all of that type of stuff. So long story short, I ended up getting this opportunity. Next thing I knew, I was living in Busan, South Korea. Wow. And it was other young people that came when I came, and we were learning from the Asians and we were learning from the older people who were making sneakers in the United States before we started using these other countries to make products for us. So I did a really good job there. And eventually I got promoted and then I got moved to Bangkok, Thailand. So moved to Thailand. So that was so different between being in Korea, South Korea, and being in Thailand. That was crazy. And I did a good job there as well. I started going to Indonesia, started going to Vietnam. I started going to basically to just about every country in Asia that do that type of work, whether it's apparel or footwear, wherever the case may be. So eventually I came back to the United States. I was there for about 5 years, came back to the United States. And because I lived over there and didn't just visit like most other people did, I ended up being in charge, 50% in charge of what we call product development. And at that time, we were making shoes in about 50 factories up and down the whole Pacific Rim. So it was cool. And I ended up working with superstar athletes. So even though I didn't become a star or become a professional player, I started being friends with a lot of the superstars. One of the people that we all know who he is, because he's more popular now than he's retired, I worked with Shaquille O'Neal. I worked with Allen Iverson. I worked with just so many different athletes across basketball, football, baseball, and just about everything that could be happening in that era back then. So it was cool. But eventually I left and I went to Adidas, which is really Adidas. And a lot of people were saying, "Well, why did you go there?" Well, there was a guy who was my mentor in Philadelphia. His name is Joe, last name Bryant, son named Kobe. But I knew him before he was married, before he had kids and everything. And Kobe's father was actually the best basketball player in Philadelphia from his middle school all the way till he got actually drafted by the Sixers. So he told me, "I'm really proud of you and you're a great guy and really like what you're doing. And Kobe is going to be at Adidas." I said, oh, and I kind of knew that because Philadelphia was an Adidas city. And Adidas has been around much longer than Nike. So back in that era, Nike wasn't who it is, who it became. So it was cool. And it took about a year for me to just say, I'm going to leave and go to Portland, Oregon, because I was living in Boston at that time. And I did. I went there, ended up working with Kobe, and I was a part of the team that created his first signature shoe, which is kind of interesting. And at another time, we can have a whole conversation about that transition like that, because that would be a long, long story, but it was something great. And then I actually eventually started, and I was an entrepreneur, and I started working at this company called Dunk.net. And Dunk.net was actually a brand that we built and created initially for Shaquille, because after I left Reebok, he actually wanted to go on his own and do something entrepreneurial as well. So believe it or not, he won the 3 championships back to back. Wasn't with Reebok. Most people think so because he was with Reebok for quite a while. But it was Dunk.net where he won all 3 of those championships in a row. But it was too early for something like that because we were the very first .com in the sportswear industry. So it kind of faded away because back in those days, the .com thing was not something that the banks were actually feeling. So we did okay. It lasted for about 3 or 4 years, but eventually I had to come back to, just the corporate world. And I ended up coming back with a brand called Skechers. And I only worked at Skechers for a few months because I had to raise my family. So, you just got to do what you got to do when you're raising your family. But when I moved, we moved to California. I had some friends who actually moved to California from Boston as well. And they were working at a brand called Vans. And they said, why are you over there? We could all be together again. So why don't you come over here? So long story short, again, we did all of the things that we could do without being negative. But I ended up moving from Skechers over to Vans. And I ended up having a really great time there as well. But one of my favorite sports is basketball. And I worked at Vans for, quite a few years. But it was somebody who bought this brand called And One. I know you probably remember that brand. And they moved that brand to California. And then they called me and said, you're the basketball guy. You work with a whole lot of people. You work with basketball people at Adidas. You work with basketball people at Reebok. And you work with a lot of superstars. So we would like for you to think about going to And One. So I told And One, no, I think I'm okay. I'm at Vans. I'm with my friends again. This is a really great thing. But then they started presenting things to me that I just couldn't say no from a business aspect. So I ended up going there and I ended up working at And One for about 7 years. And then after And One, because there was an end to that, because And One ended up being a brand that was being sold to multiple people in a short period of time. And I was there for 7 years, but they changed ownership 4 times. So I had to go start over again and start over again, start over again. But that guy I talked about from way back, Jim Van Dyne, he was then the president of HOKA. And he called me and he said, I would have hired you, but you're the president of a company and I'm a president of a company and we only can have one president. But I heard that you might be thinking about moving. And I said, yeah, I am thinking about moving. I don't know how you found that out. He said, because our world is really small. I said, I know. And you're my mentor too. So he said, well, we are making performance shoes here. And we know that you know performance shoes really well. So why don't you come over here? You'll be a little bit happier. And you don't have to just say yes right now, but I'm going to send you a ticket, fly you up here where we are, and just, hang out with us and see if you want to work with us. And I did. So I ended up working at HOKA for quite a while as well. And it was a good opportunity and it was fun. And it actually helped I guess you would say, for me, in terms of who I am, everybody thought that I just was the basketball person. But in reality, if it's a shoe that goes on your feet, I know how to make it for sure. And ever since then, I've been, an entrepreneur myself. And I try to help people who want to be in this industry. And I think that's really when the ThoroMan thing actually started happening, because I had a new business partner and we created a brand that exists right now called TCGfootwear.com. And TCG is an acronym for thoroughly crafted goods. So if you can look that up at any time, and we think we're doing a pretty good job. We've had a really slow situation because we launched the brand 2 years before COVID came in. And we're very, very fortunate because a lot of times when new young brands were coming in that era, when COVID came in, those brands disappeared and never was able to come back. Somehow we were very fortunate. We've slowed down. We've had some issues because of COVID, but now everything is starting to get back together. And at the time of that moment, my partner, which is a guy named Kyle Cox, and his dad, we all got together and we created this thing called ThoroMan.
Well, you've had a really, really strong track record there going through the whole sports footwear industry with a number of different brands and obviously working with a lot of high profile athletes. So given everything you saw a lot of different initiatives, a lot of different marketing, a lot of different strategies that were out there. What led you to decide to launch ThoroMan?
It was interesting because Kyle and myself, we really thought about this because I learned that people love sports. They love sneakers. They love apparel, all of that stuff, but they never really think about being a part of it without being an athlete. And a lot of people would try to be an athlete, and when they don't make it, they just be sad and they just go in another direction. But we love sports so much, we was like, if we're part of it, we're still with it. So we figured, since no one is really thinking the way I was thinking and the way Kyle was thinking, we can actually give this education to our youth so that they can actually be a part of something that we've enjoyed tremendously. And it's a good place to be, because I always think if you really like what you do, you don't really have a job.
So take us, Robert, behind the vision of ThoroMan and the concept of what you're trying to do through that organization.
Well, ThoroMan really is something that we think we can teach our youth, and we basically focus on high school. So when somebody's in ninth grade through 12th grade, that's when we actually have this opportunity to give them some education, learn things from them as well, because I think it's really important when you're talking to the youth. A lot of times you can learn things from them as well. And I think because we were in the sportswear industry, we were getting a ear. They wanted to listen because a lot of the people that we worked with were their heroes. And we teach differently. So for instance, and I'll just use this as an example. When you turn 18, all of a sudden, you don't know why, but you go pull the mail out and suddenly you have a debit card or a credit card. And you don't really know what that's about, but you go and use the card and you start buying stuff and everything, and you don't really understand what it's about. And the next thing you know, you're still very young, but now you owe a lot of money to this debit card or credit card. We try to talk and speak about things of that nature. We try to talk about, well, you are in your phone all the time. All the time, you're in your phone. You love using your phone. But what you don't use is the things that you can learn from your phone as opposed to just using social media. So that's very important there. And what we always tell the youth is, now that we've had this meeting with you, the next time I see you, if you're not on LinkedIn, you didn't listen to me, because LinkedIn is about business and you can learn about business, and you can go in there and you can link up with me because I have a tremendous amount of followers in LinkedIn. And then you can actually learn these things that I've took me years to do it, but you can get ahead of me. You can learn something now that I didn't learn until I became an adult. So that's really what ThoroMan is really all about. We want to teach.
So give us some examples when you talk about what types of things that you think that many of the youth are not learning until they become adults. What types of things did you learn from worldly experience and from business experience that you think we can help them learn at a younger age today?
Well, we have a pretty large amount of people that's in our company, but the people that are there are possibly a retired baseball player, a retired football player, and so forth and so on there. And we actually want you as a youth, if you want to learn and if you want to do something, you don't know if you really want to do it until you actually sit down with someone who is an expert at what you think you want to do. So it took us a while to actually put that together, but because we are so connected to the sportswear world, we got somebody like, for instance, somebody, I'm from Philadelphia, somebody from the Eagles is a part of that thing, somebody from another sport, so forth, or somebody, it may be a lawyer. Maybe you want to grow up and be a lawyer, but we'll have a lawyer that'll be there that will sit down and talk to you, and you'll find out whether this is something for you or not. So that's kind of like how this thing actually works. We don't want you to be who we are. We want you to be the best that you want to be, that you want to be. So that's very, very important in terms of how ThoroMan is set up.
So when you look ahead now, you've had great experience all over the world on the sports side. You've brought people together from multiple different sports for ThoroMan, and take a peek ahead. Give us a snapshot of what you see on the horizon for the next couple of years.
Well, hopefully, we want as these people are, when they finish high school, they're going to college. So hopefully that person now is in college is actually going to then be a mentor of the next generation of people that are coming into ThoroMan as well. This is not something just for a group of people. It's something that should be just like school, where when you go there, you do your work, you move on, you go to college, whatever is going to happen, but the same thing happens. But we want these people now that we're the mentors of, for them to become mentors so they can keep this thing going and thriving and helping our youth to be even better than they are right now.
Well, Robert, I think you've done incredible work here. We're excited to see how Sports Philanthropy Network can support the efforts of ThoroMan and incorporate that message and mission into many of our events and programs and things like that. So we appreciate you taking time to share that vision with us today.
Absolutely. I was happy to be able to come here and actually share that thing with you, because we're really excited about it. And we've just started working with a new high school right now. And it's right here in California as well. But one of the things that we want to do is to expand this and make it a global thing as opposed to just being a California thing.
So, Robert, before we let you go, we want to use our superpowers here and wave our magic wand, and we're going to give you the power to make yourself commissioner of any sport. Tell us what sport you would pick.
Right now, I think I would pick basketball. And the main reason why I'm saying basketball is, aside from the fact that I like that sport, I think that the basketball world is going to become a global thing. I've been watching it really closely over the years. I think a lot of people don't necessarily see it that way, but now I'm starting to see some information that's coming out in terms of, it looks like in 2027 or so that the NBA is going to be mixed into FIBA. And this looks like something great. And since I've lived around the world, I think I would be somebody that would work in that situation, because I'm used to being around all of these different ethnicities and things of that nature. So I think that's going to be something that's really, really cool. Even if you've seen right now that in the next All-Star game, it's going to be 3 teams, not 2. It's going to be 3 teams. One team is going to play the other. And then the other team that's going to be waiting are people who are professional basketball players, but they are paid and they're not in the NBA. And as the years have gone by, I think that it used to be the NBA is here, and then all of the other professional ones are here. But I think now it's kind of like this. It's right there. I mean, you see all of these people from Canada, and people that are from Eastern Europe, they're actually coming into the NBA and they're winning awards. So this is going to be a change, and I think it'll be something in the long term. I think it'll probably be great.
Well, basketball has always been a fairly global sport, very strong presence in other parts of the world beyond the United States. And you look at where some of the elite players, even in the NBA, are coming from. Obviously, in the last decade or more, many of the top picks are coming from Europe and from other leagues before they get to the United States. So it's going to be interesting to follow and see how that works and see how that new all-star format itself will work as well. So it's definitely going to be interesting to follow and see how that works. So, Robert, again, thank you for being with us today. We really enjoyed learning more about your background and about the vision that you have for ThoroMan. And again, if people want more information about the organization, we'll flash it up here, but tell people where to get more details about ThoroMan.
Absolutely. Looking forward to that.
So you can see right here, you can email to Rob at rob@tcgfootwear.com, or you can visit the ThoroMan website at bethoro.org and learn more about the great work that we're doing. And for all of our viewers and listeners, we appreciate you taking the time to join us on the Sports Philanthropy Podcast. We know that you've got a lot of options out there, so thank you for being with us today. This is your host, Roy Kessel, signing off. Please remember to live generously. Thank you.